John Steinbeck was born on February 27, 1902 in Salinas, California, and died on December 20th, 1968 in New York City, New York. He had 3 sisters, and from an early age he liked writing. From 14 years old, he would lock himself in his room and write. He found his appreciation for writing in California's Salinas Valley and later went to Stanford University in 1919. In 1929, the U.S. stock market crashed and he had plenty of inspiration to write off of, as the Great Depression took a toll on everyone. This influenced his writing and he had plenty of material to lead off of. However, what influenced Steinbeck to write The Pearl was his visit to La Paz, Baja California Sur, with his friend on a sea expedition. Also, after World War II, he was forced to discover the meaning of life, as the main character in The Pearl was destroyed by greed and unconsumable wealth that he lost all sight in the meaning of life. In The Pearl, there's a lot of figurative language, including similes, as comparing Juana to a lioness, her eyes cold as the eyes of a lioness, alliteration, cooking corn cakes, personification, the wind screamed over the gulf, but the majority of the book consisted of metaphors. Comparing Kino to an animal, he is an animal now, for hiding, for attacking, and he only lived to preserve himself and his family. All of the figurative language used help deepen and strengthen the plot and show a more in-depth meaning of the book, the feelings of the characters, and a better description and imagery of the atmosphere and setting. The point of view from the narrative's perspective is third-person omniscient because it uses he and she to describe the feelings and actions of all the characters. For example, it shows through the heads of not only Kino, but also Juana, the doctor, and the other minor characters like his brother and the priest. The narrator is all-knowing. The Pearl is a recent perspective because of the events happening in the novel are said to be happening right then, but it is past tense because everything happening has already taken place in the story.
So this is the additional comments and the analysis. I personally really like this book. I thought it was very strong in many points, including that it had a very interesting plot, in my opinion. From the minute the scorpion was gonna fall on the baby, I was like hooked. Like, wow, this is a good book. It also was very suspenseful and captivating. The fact that they were like constantly like being chased or like hunted, I guess, literally hunted. So it was intense and very interesting. I also thought that the author skillfully described the emotions by talking about like the song of the family and the song of the evil. I think he really like portrayed how peaceful it was at some parts and how scary and evil it was at some other parts. But it didn't have many weaknesses, in my opinion, besides it did kind of go on a lot about nature, which for many wouldn't seem very interesting or a good use of the book. But also, I think in some parts it wasn't really clear, like you just had to like infer, like I guess like we can kind of infer about what happened with the baby when the doctor cured it. We can kind of infer that the doctor poisoned it first, but I wish they'd kind of said like made it more clear that he definitely did. Same with like why were the pearl buyers being like pretending the pearl wasn't worth so much, because it didn't really say if they were telling the truth, but we can infer it wasn't. But I wish it was like more direct. And this book was pretty unique. I didn't find it very similar to any other books. I guess it was kind of similar to Lord of the Flies a little bit, because it took place like on a beach, and it had a bunch of like greed and violence. And in relation to the other Steinbeck books, it was pretty similar, because a lot of his books aren't like happy joy. They're kind of like dark or like depressing. One of them even took place in the Great Depression. So it took place in North America, like many other of his books, and it talked about poverty, compassion, and evil. And a lot of his books do that, so it was a little similar. So this is the author's use of diction in The Pearl. The type of language he uses, the options were formal, informal, or neutral, and this language is definitely formal because it does 2 words instead of acronyms. Like it says, he could not move until the scorpion moved instead of he couldn't. So that's a rule of formal language. And neutral means it doesn't have any emotion, but this book definitely has emotion, especially when it describes like the song of the family and the song of evil, and how Kino is often like filled with rage. It really describes how he does have emotions. And this story also has lots of images. It describes a lot about the nature that Juana and Kino travel to. It describes the streams, the trees, the soil. It really like goes into depth about describing the nature. And the language is pretty figurative because it uses lots of symbols such as the pearl, the music. There's probably a lot more. And the language is highly ironic for many reasons. This is a very ironic story if you think about it. The baby, which is cured once, ends up dying at the end. And that's kind of ironic because like the whole story kind of drove from like, yay, the baby's alive, he's gonna have a good life, but he ends up just not having a life, so quite ironic. The pearl, which is supposed to free Kino and Juana from their dilemmas and bring them good life, ends up making them even worse off than they were before in their life of poverty. They lose their son, they lose their house, their boat, so the pearl didn't bring wealth at all, just left them worse off. And yeah, all the people who were going after the pearl to give themselves better lives ended up losing their lives, so they also had a very ironic situation. And also, all this really probably wouldn't have happened if Kino had just snatched a scorpion a second before. I mean, the fact that he could like squish it after shows that he was capable of getting it. But he chose to like wait a second and then, so yeah, it's one of the stories like, oh, if only this hadn't happened. And the story also reveals a lot about the social status, education, and religion of the main characters. We can tell that they're in poverty, but they often talk about like the rich communities, like where the doctor lives, but they have to like make their own rice cakes and stuff. Also, we can tell they don't have much education, but they that's why it would be such a big deal if they could send baby Koyuto to school so they could learn and he could learn. And also, we don't are given an exact religion, but we can tell that they believe in God because they often say like, go with God. And they're probably some sort of Christian because they mention the church a lot and they want to get married in a church. And so this book is also euphonious, meaning its sounds are mostly like harmonic, not like sudden. I know this because I found the online book and did Control F to find the different sounds, and it was more euphonious by far. But there is actually a lot of cacophonous too, but it seems just pretty random. He just did the words that would work. Like there were a lot of ah sounds, but there were also a lot of like P and T sounds, and also there's a lot of K because the main character's name is Kino. And some things I thought that stood out in this book, like certain words. I think the adjectives, like the evil was a big deal. Like they didn't, like evil really means it's just truly bad. You don't really need to think about it. They had a really clear definition of what was evil in the book. Also, like they had a lot of ancient rituals when they described stuff as ancient. So like they described the pearl as like rich, warm, gloating, triumphant, but it was also described as evil. So I thought that was interesting. Some verbs that were interesting is, it said that, yes, God punished Kino because he rebelled when they were like going on like what would happen. And so I think that really revealed that they think that God would punish someone if they tried to like do things that weren't meant to be. Also, some like certain phrases that meant something to Juana and Kino that they said that was like just between them was when Kino said I am a man, that meant to Juana, that had a certain meaning to her, it said in the book. Like that kind of was like her thing to like back down, but to her it meant like being a man means that you're half insane and half God, which really shows like how Juana thought and how their society was.
Here, there's another page.
And also they would often say go with God as like be safe. It was kind of like a euphemism, like you might die. I don't really want to say that, so I'm just saying be hopeful, go with God. And yeah, I think that's what stood out. So in the book The Pearl, there's a lot of imagery, both about sound and sight, because they mention different songs a lot, and they describe like how they would sound. The songs are like contrasting, like there's songs of comfort and thankfulness, but there's also songs of warning and fear, and they've been passed down from Kino's people, it says in the book. And some of the main songs is there's the Song of the Family, and how they described it in the book with some quotes is, they said the rhythm of the family song was the grinding stone where Juana worked the corn for morning cakes, and Juana's song sang softly an ancient song that had only 3 notes and yet endless variety of interval. This was part of the family song too, and it said the song was safety and was warmth. And this song is a symbol of comfort and love and family, basically, how family can bring you those emotions. But then they also had the Song of Evil. They called the Song of Evil the music of the enemy, of any foe of the family, a savage, secret, dangerous melody. And underneath the Song of the Family cried plaintively. And the songs are symbols, and this song is warning them of evil. When something evil was coming, Kino or Juana would hear the song in their heads. But also it says the Song of the Family was underneath. So it says like your family is there through you, through your struggles, and they'll help you overcome the evil. And there was also a lot of visual symbolism, images. One of the main symbols is like of the nature, and especially the stream when Juana and Kino are traveling. It says that high in the stone mountains, a little spring bubbled out of a rupture in the stone, and every now and then it died completely, but it nearly always gushed out cold and clean and lovely, and all the animals from miles around came to drink, and plants grew by it. And then a really good quote when they're describing the nature that makes it like seem like it's a symbol, not just a description, is when they say the little pools were places of life because of the water and places of killing because of the water too. So I think that's a symbol saying that when people are vulnerable, trusting, kind, and open to people that they may not quite know well, it often benefits them and others, but sometimes it can lead to bad things, so you have to be willing to open yourself, even like open up, even though it may result in hurt. So yeah, I think that's the imagery in the book.
So the story starts off with the introduction of the family, which is Kino, his wife Juana, and their baby Coyotito. In the beginning of the story, Coyotito gets stung by this big scorpion, and that basically just turns Kino and Juana's lives around, and they're just really shocked at what happened. They don't know what to do. They don't really have much money, so their only resort is to go to the doctor and hope that they will help them, even though they know that people like the doctor are kind of racist and aren't going to really treat them because of their money. So they go to the doctor, and just like they assume, the doctor is going to refuse to visit them because they don't have much money. So they go back to their house very sad because their baby is very sick and has been poisoned with the poison from the scorpion. So they go back to their house, and Kino, his job is to search for pearls. That's what he does. So just like any other day, he goes into the ocean and searches for pearls. That's his job, and he finds a huge pearl. So him and Juana think, we found this huge pearl. People are gonna like us now. People are gonna think us serious. They're gonna help my baby. We have money now, and so they think that everything's just gonna go fine for them. But it does not go fine for them. Yes, the doctor does eventually come help them because he does find out they have money, but he's not really sincere about helping them. He doesn't really care about their baby's life. He just cares about money. So he comes and helps them, and he gives them medicine that doesn't help Coyotito, and anything kind of makes him worse. And they think that everything's gonna go fine. They have this money now, and things just keep getting worse and worse. Everyone knows that they have this pearl, so they keep like coming to their house trying to steal it. And as that happens, Kino has to like defend him and his family off, and ends up basically fighting with this group of people that try to steal the pearl from him and his family. And that just is crazy. In the process, and different times people try to steal the pearl, he ends up killing somebody, and this just shows that his whole idea of wealth is going to fix his life is just turning him into an actual like animal. Basically, he has like animalistic characteristics, and it's just making him crazy. And so eventually things just get even worse for the family, and their house burns down. they have nowhere to go because their house is burned down, so they decide that they're going to go to this cave for shelter, which is probably not that good of an idea. But they go to this cave for shelter, and there they find more people that see that they have this pearl and they want to steal the pearl from them like everyone else does, because they also think that money is going to solve their problems. So they try to steal this pearl, and one of the guys there has a rifle and plans on shooting one of them, so he shoots the rifle into the air to like scare them. And so Kino, what he does is try to defend his family, so he goes and attacks the people that are trying to steal the pearl from them. And after he attacks all of them successfully and he gets them away from the pearl, he comes back and he hears the baby crying. And all he could think of is, oh my gosh, they shot the baby. And lo and behold, the baby was shot and Koyotito ends up dying. And basically the story ends with Kino and Wana going back to where they used to live, even though they don't have a house, and basically their entire lives just falling apart because they thought that this pearl was going to help them, and in the end it didn't. So the pearl takes place in La Paz, Mexico, in a rural beachy area. And the author doesn't really specify like a specific time period, but it most likely takes place in the early 1900s. And the societies are split into two, where there's people that are less fortunate and have a little bit less money, and the people that are richer and feel as if they're more superior towards those. Kino, his family Wana, or his wife Wana, and his kid fit into the poor category, and the doctor and stuff are in the richer, more superior category. So there are many themes in this story, just like any other book, but the main theme of The Pearl is that we all think that money can just bring us happiness. It buys us food, it buys us concert tickets, it buys us clothes, what else do we need? But it really doesn't buy you true happiness, and if anything, it could just make your life worse. And this example is showed by Kino and Wana's like entire story, their life story that was shown in that book. They think in the beginning that after Koyotito gets sick, and even before that, you know, we're poor, we need money, money's gonna make everything better, we can have so many more opportunities. But once they find this pearl, and once everything just goes down, Koyotito gets sick, the doctor, I mean, Kino killing people, at the end you can just tell that this money has really like negatively affected the family and has really like changed who Kino is. Like, he was a loving father, really loved his family, was always there. I mean, from what we know, there was no problems with Wana and Kino, and you know, at first both Wana and Kino thought that this money was going to make them happy, and it just changed Kino, and it changed Wana for the better, because she did realize through the middle that, you know, this isn't working out, like maybe we should get rid of this pearl. And Kino, because the money took over him, and he snapped, and he was like, no.
She can cut it out.
Where is she?
I don't know.
What do you need?
I'm gonna tell her that I forgot a binder in class, and then go get off.
Just find her. Okay, go.
I don't even know what I'm saying. What was I saying? Something about like, oh my god, that hurt!
How about Wana, like, didn't have any problems and stuff?
Yeah. So, Wana eventually realized throughout the story that this pearl is just really just negatively affecting their lives, and that wealth isn't really going to make us happy, but because this money and the idea of a perfect life just took over Kino, his, like, animal characteristics, and it just made him basically turn into this beast that only cared about money, and it just changed their life. So it just really shows you that wealth doesn't really make everything better.
Wana, basically, she kind of acts as almost a sense of reason during the whole situation. She actually is aware of what the pearl is doing and what's happening around her, and how her husband's just kind of getting more and more greedy and protective of it. And she realizes this, but she's very passive and doesn't do anything to prevent her husband from getting to the pearl most of the time. She attempts to throw it into the ocean, but like, she just kind of gets assaulted. And then she's like, okay, he killed a man, I'm gonna go help him clean this up. And then she's just over it. She's just helping keep the pearl again. She's not getting rid of the pearl anymore. So, while she acts as the sense of reason throughout the story, she kind of follows along with what he's doing. And because of this, she doesn't actually change what happens much. She's just supplementing it, kind of. So, the doctor is one of the wealthy people in like the richer part of the town, and initially he's gone to help because Coyotito's been like stung by a scorpion, and then he's like, no, get away from me, you don't have money. But then he finds out, oh my god, these people have got a real pricey pearl, and so he offers to help, but he doesn't actually do anything because not much he can do. He's literally just in it for the money. So throughout the story, he's kind of used to represent like the greed of the entire town, as everyone's just kind of after the money, and he, while everyone just wants the money, he's the one that is most shown taking extreme action to just get the money. And so he's just I'm doing real good. So the fact that he only helps once he finds out the money, he actually doesn't even ask prior. He's just like, oh, they've got a pearl? Yeah, that's my customer. Shows how everyone's kind of thinking about the situation, and how everyone's kind of just thinking greedily about the situation, instead of in any sort of proper positive way throughout the story. Kino, basically, he's a father and husband, and he's very caring and ambitious with what he can do to help his family. And so basically he finds this like hardcore pearl and he's like, yeah, this is a lot of money, I can finally help my family, because like his child's over there like dying off in the corner or something. And so he buries it away, he like keeps it there so he can turn it in for money, so that he can like educate his child and keep his child from dying. And he starts to get really anxious about it, and it makes him very greedy with what he can do as he becomes more and more ambitious and just obsessive about helping his family get out of poverty, to the point where towards the end of the story he basically just becomes an animal, and he's like hurting people over this pearl, and people are like dying for this pearl, because while he started as like a caring father, he just kind of gradually degrades until he's just a real greedy animal.
The pearl represents the false hope on the outside, but its true self is misleading, as it's evil and greedy. Before Kino found the pearl, although he was poor, he was happy and content with his family. After Kino got the pearl, his greed took over his conscience, which led him to lose his old self and become a wild animal. The songs playing in their heads also represents their true feelings, as they can't express it themselves on the outside. The tone that is given throughout the story is ironic, as the pearl is expected to give Kino and his family a great lifestyle, but instead drives Kino into insanity, and they end up not living their dreams at all. When Kino finds the pearl, he feels his family began that day with hope, found on page 40, because he believed that the pearl was the answer to their poverty, as they would begin to live a comfortable life. However, the pearl begins to cause chaos in their family, eventually leading to Coyotito's sudden death. With Steinbeck's use of music of family and evil, the reader can see how the music of family is strong in the beginning, but ends up being taken over by the song of evil, as the evil in the pearl has consumed Kino. Three quotes that capture the main essence of the story are "What else could I do?" "They are cheats," found on page 54, "Believe me, I am a man," page 57, and "This pearl has become my soul. If I give it up, I shall lose my soul," which is found on page 67. These quotes are significant because they highlight how the pearl, which represents greed and evil, has consumed Kino to the point where losing the pearl means he loses himself also, although he has already lost himself, as he gave in to the pearl's needs and has become deranged and irresponsible. However, there's one quote that signifies the false hope given to the family throughout the story, which is, "And they began this day with hope," which is found on page 40. This quote is important because besides representing greed and evil, the pearl serves as a false hope to the family, because ever since Kino got the pearl from the ocean, they made several promises, none of which were fulfilled at the end.